Looks like we're good, Chuck.
Okay. I would like to welcome everyone who's in attendance tonight. I am not going to call this meeting to order at this point in time because we have some legal issues and whether we can actually hold this meeting. So we have the city attorney present. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kachurik, let her explain what we can or can't do.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's nice to be here. It's been a long time since I've been at one of your meetings. As I'm sure many of you have heard, there's been a lot going on in the state of Michigan over the last number of weeks since the Supreme Court found, specifically on at the beginning of October, found that the governor did not have the proper authority under Michigan Constitution and law in order to declare the state of emergency that she did, and has stricken all of her executive orders. While that's been happening, the state of Michigan, many believe that there was a stay of the effectiveness of the Supreme Court's order for 21 days, during which she would have an appeal period to appeal to the next court, that being the federal court system. During that time, she filed 2 motions with the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to clarify their order as to the effective date of their disannouncement of her orders, or her executive orders and her powers, and to instead extend the ability for her executive orders to be observed through the end of October, which was her last order, so that everyone's could kind of rally and get their business in order. The Supreme Court on the 12th came back and said, no, we cannot do that. We do not have a legal ability or an ability to grant that remedy. And in fact, our findings that you did not have those powers to issue the executive orders that you did was effective on the date of our ruling. In the background, we had the state of Michigan, the legislative branch, starting to work to put together legislation in order to safeguard the ability to continue to have virtual meetings. The way that they did that is by amending the Open Meetings Act. So there was 2 original bills, actually. One has sort of died on the vine, but the bill 1108 that went before the Senate passed with an overwhelming majority. And they made a number of amendments to the Open Meetings Act that would allow for communities to, at least the end of December of this year, with some provisions for next year as well, to continue to have virtual meetings and to have these virtual meetings satisfy all of the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. And it also made that ability to have a valid public meeting via virtual means retroactive to April 30th, thereby protecting all of the decisions, motions, and actions that have been taken across the state by local municipalities. So while that passed the Senate, it had to go back before the House of Representatives. It went before the House of Representatives today through the House of Ways and Means Committee, and it passed unanimously. Then it went to the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives looked at the bill and in fact made some more changes to it. What it did was say that the validity of virtual meetings and any actions taken by boards, commission, councils, etc., would be retroactive to actually March 18th, and some further provisions for next year. So now that they've made changes, it now has to go back to the Senate again. And there was some talk that that would happen today. I have not received word that that has happened. Once it goes through the Senate, then it will then have to go before the governor, and she will sign it or veto. If she does not sign it, it can sit on her desk for 14 days. If she does not veto it, it's automatically enacted. So it depends if she agrees with it or not, how quickly that will happen. If she agrees with it, then it has to be filed with the Secretary of State and then it becomes law. So we are still in the wait game now to get our legislative branch to pass the laws needed so that we may continue these meetings legally and have them be valid. There's some argument, and we were talked about this last night at the commission meeting, that there's some argument that this nonetheless complies with the Open Meetings Act, and there's some case law that could help that. However, it is a risk. There is the risk that it could be invalidated if challenged. And therefore, the commission last night felt that they did not want to even take a risk. Many communities throughout Michigan have decided not to take a risk. Many meetings went on last night. Many different communities decided that the risk was minimal and they wanted to go forward. But our commission has said that they did not want the risk. And so therefore, their meeting was canceled. And it's been determined then that all boards and commissions and committees like yourselves will not go forward until we have the passage of the actual law. So Bruce and I thought it would be best to come get together because many of the public maybe would not have understood this or known this or understood why you weren't having a meeting. And then we want to make sure if any of you had questions, we were available to answer those questions and be available for you. That was kind of a quick overview. I know I said a lot, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Mr. Hart?
Yes, Mary, is the concern over the appellants possibly coming back over a ruling that we make, or is it by Governor Whitmer's her backlash? What's the concern? Is it mainly the appellants not objecting to the decision that we make, or what are we exposed to?
Yes, so the potential risk would be that a person could come back and say that the meeting itself was invalid and violated the Open Meetings Act. And if they succeeded in that argument, then this meeting would be, if you held it in decisions, it would be overturned and stricken as an invalid meeting, and then any action you took would be deemed invalid. Also keeping in mind that if a person were to violate the Open Meetings Act, it technically is a criminal misdemeanor. However, they'd have to be able to demonstrate that there was an intentional violation with malice. And I don't think that's what anybody's trying to do. I'm not at all worried about that. But the risk is that someone could try to invalidate this. I opined last night that I think that there's some really great arguments to the contrary, but it is a risk. And sometimes, especially with something like this, which is pretty important for the denying or granting of certain variances and things like that, it is somewhat dangerous that if it's overturned, that could be very problematic, especially if someone, let's say, for instance, started building something and based upon the granting, started to spend money and things like that, and then it turns, at some point, gets overturned, we would certainly be liable.
Let's see. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir?
I just want to make a clarification. Mr. Hart was referring about the appellant having a problem, but it also could apply that somebody who was opposed to requested variance could come in and attack it on the basis we had no authority to grant the variance.
Yes, I agree.
And
Is it Mr. Lilly?
yeah.
Yes. The one that's spelled right. An ongoing battle. Should we, as a group, or almost, any of the boards that are in our position, take the city commission stance as kind of the leading, or we ought to do what the city commission has done?
Yes.
Since they're I guess the top.
Correct. And I think Chairman Lilly, with the IE, not the EY, said, if the commission that appointed us not hold their meeting, then we ought not either. I think that's somewhat logical. Also, the city manager has given the edict that we are not to conduct the meetings. And therefore, based upon both of their opinions, we won't be holding this meeting. Yes, Mr. Miller with an
Yeah, just certainly we're a no-go for this evening, but everything that we received, I got all my stuff spread out across the dining room table ready to go. But we pack it up and save it for another day. Is the information we received so far still valid? I assume it is.
Yes, yes. And I think Bruce is going to discuss when your next meeting will be.
Yes, Mr. Miller, all the information you have before you is still valid. You would just hold on to that until we have the next meeting where these appeals will be before you.
Okay.
Mr. Reddy?
Yeah, quick question. How are we going to notify the public and the appellants that are before us tonight that this is going to be delayed? I'm assuming most of them are online, but I'd like to make sure that everybody knows what happened and why it happened.
Well, I think, all the appellants are online. They're at the meeting here. It looks like we have members of the public here also that are here. And when we decide when when these cases will be heard at the next meeting, we'll make that announcement and then everybody will be aware of that.
Thanks, Bruce. That makes sense.
Mr. Johnson, are you going to republish too?
I think under this circumstance, I think if we postpone the 4 appeals tonight to the next regularly scheduled BZA meeting, I don't think this is kind of an unusual circumstance. I mean, the agenda will be noticed in the paper. We'll have to decide if we're going to send postcards out again of the meeting. I think we'll probably err on the side of caution and just do that. Spend the additional money for the posting, just because I don't think we've ever canceled a meeting under these circumstances.
Any other questions for the city attorney? We discussed when we're going to, I would suggest that we have all these matters postponed until the next regularly scheduled meeting. Any discussion on that?
I think it makes sense to do that. We're getting ready. I know the publishing in the newspaper, the deadline for the November meeting is next Monday. So we've already started preparing that for 3 appeals that are on the agenda for the November meeting. And with the 4 tonight, that would bring us to 7 cases for that night. And I know that's the maximum number of cases the BZA will hear at one meeting. So we have room at that meeting to do that.
Yeah, the problem we have, if we try to schedule it earlier, we don't know if the legislation is going to be passed or not, so that we might even have to cancel. If we were to say scheduled in 2 weeks, we might have to cancel that. So I think it's better to go to next month.
That would allow us enough time for the public noticing.
Mhm. Well, since we're not in session, we can't vote on anything.
Not doing anything.
All right, so everybody shake their head. Yes or no? All right, so the matters that were scheduled for hearing tonight will be rescheduled for the next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be the second Tuesday in November.
So this non-meeting is adjourned. There was no meeting.
Well, there was no meeting, so we can't, there's nothing to adjourn.
This non-meeting is
We're done.
over.
We're done talking.
Okay, everybody have a good night, and
You
this
too.
Zoom
Good night.
meeting is going to end.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Non-Zoom
All
meeting.
right, thanks for
Non-Zoom
coming.
meeting.
Bye.
Right, thank you.